Welcome, lovely one, to the Meant for More podcast. My name's Lisa Clifford, and I am building the world's most empowering Meant for More movement, leading millions of heart-led purpose seekers from feeling insignificant to invincible. So I truly hope you enjoy this next episode. And another treat. I start every conversation with saying another treat because I am bringing to you people that I love being with and that have a special and powerful message for the world through their lived experiences. And today we have got Pollie Rafferty. Pollie is an international speaker, but she's different. You might have noticed. She's different, not just because she's got blue hair, blue eyes, red lipstick, but she's the Speakers Storyteller. And what is in every fibre of Pollie's being, she embodies it, is this ability to help people transform, heal, grow, inspire through their stories. And I'm so happy, Pollie, that you're with us today to support my Meant for More movement in helping people step into the more, whether it's more connection, more love, more meaning in their life. And I think your message and your stories will absolutely resonate with whoever's listening right now. So, my lovely, let's start off with, can you think of a moment and a story that you'd be willing to share where you had that stirring or that ache where you felt like you were meant for more and you had to listen to it and then it led you to wherever it took you? Can you share?
Yeah. So I'm getting over a cold, so I could get a bit croaky at times. When I was a lot younger, I was actually groomed into a relationship with a 36-year-old man. I was only 16 at the time, and I left home to go and live with him. It became abusive, controlling and aggressive. He controlled every aspect of everything. He'd come to my house and, well, he'd come to my place of work and get my wages. It was back in the day when we got paid weekly in cash, that sort of thing. And he'd take my wages. He was controlling financially, emotionally and everything like that. And it got to the point where I didn't feel that I could continue living like that at all. And my self-worth was so low, my self-belief was so low that I couldn't even end anything because I didn't want to cause any problems. I didn't want to cause a problem to anybody else. So I remember very vividly, I was sat in the hallway of the flat that we lived in at the time, and I was sat in the corner. We'd had an argument. I was absolutely terrified that something was going to happen. And I was sat there in the corner, just quivering away. And I was 21. I was only 21. I was still a youngster. Compared to now, even though 21-year-olds nowadays say, oh, I'm getting old, I think, oh, lucky so-and-sos. Anyway, I was sat in the corner just quaking, thinking, what have I done to deserve this? I haven't done anything to deserve this. And then it was just sort of, it was almost like a download. It was always like somebody saying, there's got to be another reason for this. There's got to be a reason this is happening to you. There's got to be a reason this is happening to me. This is, I can't just leave it like this. This can't be the end of it. There's got to be more to having this experience, why I'm having this experience. And that was the moment I started to fight back. That was the moment I started to make plans to leave, to get out, to move on, to better myself. And everything since then has been leading me to heal, to recover. I had post-traumatic stress, I reckon, anxiety, depression. I've had fibromyalgia. So all of these things are trauma related a lot of the times. And so everything that I've done from there onwards has been to heal that experience and to learn from it and to have additional experiences that I can learn from and move on from. Get further on in my overall experience of life so that I can now at this point start to share it. It was only over COVID, when I realised that it was a grooming. I'd carried guilt with me for years because of the stress that I put on my parents. If you could imagine your 16-year-old just disappearing, sort of, they knew where I was. They knew I was dating this guy and they tried to stop it. They did what they could. I blamed them for a while because I thought if they'd have reacted differently, then maybe I wouldn't have left home. There was all these things going on, and it really started to come together over COVID because as a youth worker, I wanted to stop this happening to other young people, because I felt that if there was somebody else that wasn't a friend or a relative or something like that who would have told me, don't do this, this is stupid. He's 20 years older than you. He's not got any prospects. There's got to be something wrong. If somebody that was in the environment that could have recognised the grooming, my life could have been completely different. I mean, I had really good grades up until the last year of school, and then it all dropped down because I was spending my time trying to get out with him, go to the pub. He introduced me to drugs and all of these sort of things. So nobody picked up on the fact that my grades dropped, or that I was struggling, or that my personality was changed. Whereas as a youth worker, that is part of what we do, is we notice these things. So I became a youth worker to try and prevent that from happening to somebody else. And it was during COVID when we were in lockdown and we hadn't got the centre open. We were wandering around just checking up on the young people, and we did a load of training. And it was only, I'd done training on grooming and that sort of thing before, but it was only on this point that I actually started to connect the dots, that is what had happened to me, that it wasn't my fault. I was a vulnerable young person, undiagnosed autistic, extremely vulnerable, extremely, naive, and trying to just find a place where I belonged in the world as much as anything. And that was when I was able to let go of all the grief and all the guilt and all the blame, and just sort of go, this is what happened. This is how it happened. And now it's everything that's happened since then, up to then, since then, has led me to this point where I am now. I can look back and think, well, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened, and then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have met this person. I might not have met this. And everything that I've done has led me. It's almost like somebody's going, like, go this way, go that way, go this way. And I meet the people I need to meet at the right time. When I'm ready to go on, or take something new on, or do something different. And it's all sort of falling into place. I mean, my kids are getting a bit older now. They're getting a bit more independent. I had kids late in life because I've never met the person that I wanted to have children with, somebody that I could rely on to support me. My health wasn't well and wasn't good enough, and I never wanted to have kids to look after me. And if I'd have had children at certain points in my life, my health was so bad I couldn't leave the house. My anxiety was so bad I couldn't leave the house. My fibro was so bad. The fibro was so bad that I was in pain all the time. I was grumpy. I was nasty. I've had to learn how to manage all myself before I could learn to manage small children. And I finally met the man of my dreams, I suppose, because when I was younger, as I was growing up, all I ever wanted in life really was to be happy, to have a house, to have a husband who loved me, a job that I loved, a house, a washing machine, and kids. A couple of kids. But the washing machine,
love that. A washing machine. I love that.
it was always a washing, because I spent so much time watching my mum with her twin tub. I thought, I'm never having kids. I'm not having kids until I've got a washing machine. So that was always very focused on as part of what I wanted to achieve in life. And that was it. I never had massive dreams. I just wanted to be happy and have a family and belong. I think that was the biggest part of it, to belong. And I finally got that. And I could just stop. I go, right, I'm happy. I've got my family. I've got a husband who adores me. I've got my kids. I've got a job I love, working with young people. I could have just stopped. But as that sort of happened, the more I'm here for something more started to build up. There's a reason why you've gone through all these things. There's a reason why you're here. There's a reason for the experiences that you've had. There's a reason for your passion in storytelling. There's a reason for this. And it all became more and more obvious to me that there was more to it. there was more for me to do. I haven't finished. I'm not done. And that now's the time for me to, I've done all my healing. I've got back to where I should be. I'm feeling so much more confident in myself and out there. And I'm in a place where a lot of people want to be. They want to be in a comfortable position where they're happy and they could just happily just carry on as they are and enjoy the rest of their life doing what they're doing. But I need to show people how to get there through the stories that I've experienced and to carry on doing more. So this is where it started years and years and years ago, and it's just continued throughout. And I open up to people all the time. I tell people about my mental health journey. I don't hide anything. And people always come up to me and say, I'm so glad that you've shared that with me. I'm so glad that you're willing to open up and be there and say these things, because I don't feel alone anymore. I don't feel as though I'm going through this on my own, that I'm struggling, that I'm the only one. I now know that there's somebody else that's been through something similar and can relate to how I am and how I'm feeling. Yeah, that's why I'm on the journey I'm on now, is because of poor little 21-year-old me just sat in that corner thinking, I don't want anybody to ever feel as worthless as I do right now, and there's got to be a reason for that.
It's quite an embodied experience, is your teachings. It's come from your lived experience, and there's so much need these days for people to be authentic in order to make an impact and a difference. It's not enough that we know the theory. It's not enough that we've got the intellect or that we've learned how to train or how to teach. There's something about being, being completely authentic. And when I mean authentic, you will change people's lives in a way that somebody who's thought, oh, that's a good job to go into, won't be able to touch the surface of. And there'll be something people, and without you even, I'm imagining that without you even sharing your story with anybody, that people will feel something about you that they can't intellectualize, but they just know that you'll get them, or they feel understood, or they feel heard, or they feel present, because you're taking your lived experience and it's your purpose. There's something powerful about being around somebody that is embodying the work. And what I would love to ask is, when you were sat on that floor, 21-year-old, in that corridor, knowing you were meant for more, I mean, that's amazing if you can have that awareness of that. What steps did you then need to take to create some course correction for yourself to get out of the situation? What was the next step for you? I mean, first of all, it's the awareness, isn't it, of I've got to make a dynamic shift here.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing was the funny thing was, straight after I had that feeling, he came into the hallway, and it was the first time I ever fought back, and I was I felt like I was being backed up into a corner, and he was coming at me, and I just sort of leapt at him. I'd never done anything like that before, but I suddenly had the strength to start fighting back. I leapt at him, knocked him to the floor. It was the dog started fighting in the other room, so I got distracted and he managed to break free. But I got up and I just ran. I just ran for my life almost. It was like, I remember it was wet, it was muddy. I lost a boot in the mud and I just stopped, grabbed it and carried on running. And I turned up at my friend's door, a complete mess. Black eye, muddy boot in my hand. And I just went, I need to get out. And I went back to my parents, but they phoned my parents. I stayed with them overnight. I went back to my parents for a bit, and then I went to collect my stuff. My dog was still in that house, and she was the world to me. She was the most important thing to me. She's partly what saved my life, because I needed to look after her. And I went back to collect some stuff, and he managed to wangle me back round again. to state that it was almost like I was three different people. There was Pauline, that's my actual birth name is Pauline, and she was the good girl who did everything that was expected of her. She was like the daughter, the student, she was the good girl. Then there was Paul, who was under his control completely. That's what he called. And then there was Polly. There's Polly, who was strong. She was the strong one. She was the one that wanted to step away. She was the one that wanted to get away, move away. And it was a battle between the three of us at that point. And Paul won at that time. She was the one she wanted to stay with him. And I went back because I was scared, I think. I was scared of change. It had been 7 years. I was scared of what would happen. I think I went back into my comfort zone almost. And I did feel like I still loved him in a way.
And sorry to interrupt, but I'm imagining your comfort zone was anything but comfortable. It was just familiar.
Yeah, it was just familiar. Yeah, it was what I knew and what I felt safe with, because I knew it and I didn't know what else was there. It was unpredictable. It wasn't safe. It wasn't comfortable, but it was what I was used to. And so many people say, well, why don't you leave? And that's the reason, because it's what you're used to. And it's sometimes better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And it can be so hard to make that step up. But in the end, I think I convinced myself in a way that I was in love with him, because I was scared of Brian. I was absolutely terrified of him. I was scared what he'd do to me if I left. I was scared what he'd do to my parents, or to other people. I was terrified. And I think I fell in love with another person because he was big, he was brash, he was tall, he had long ginger hair, and I always did quite like that. But I don't think I actually fell in love with him. I fell in love with the idea of being protected by somebody else. And that gave me the courage then to leave. So I booked my dog in to get spayed. And I took my dog from the flat to go and get her spayed and just didn't go back. That was it. I never went back. I left everything else there. I just took my dog, and that was it. And it was a really difficult time. I went back to my parents. I stayed there, and that was when I first started trying to mend the damage that had happened, because my self-worth was so low. I couldn't do anything, couldn't ask for anything, I just felt completely worthless. And it was then that I started to build myself back up a little bit and start to rebuild my life and to try and start discovering who I was. But that was a difficult time because I had absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very, very complicated period of my life. There's still more to that story. It goes on for a bit. And this is part of the reason why I was worried about telling stories, is because they do get complicated. Like when you start telling a story, you sometimes think, well, do I need to add this bit to add context to that bit? And then this happened and that happened. But not all of it needs to be included. There's a lot that I didn't need to include to get the point across with that story as to where I was. But there's a lot more that can be included if people need to know about it or whatever. And people get bogged down with the whole massiveness of their life and their story, and so it's partly why I do what I do, is to help them realise that they don't need everything.
I think we've kind of moved into the storytelling bit, and I think there's a beauty in not telling every ingredient of the story, because actually the purpose of the story is for somebody to put the story into their life so that they can relate to it. And there needs space in that, doesn't there? There needs to be space that they can identify or interpret in a way that's meaningful to them. So I think that is that right? Because you're an expert, Polly, aren't you? You're an expert in helping speakers tell their story in a way that has the impact and the transformation that they want to make. And that is an incredible skill, because as you're saying, there's a temptation to give every detail so people understand exactly what it was like for you. But the purpose of a story isn't about people understanding exactly what it was like for you. It's understanding the parts that they can relate to, and then the power that they turn that into the alchemy, they turn that into for their own transformation. Is that
Yeah,
right? Have I?
absolutely. Yeah, that's bang on 100%. Yeah. That's why I can tell the stories, because they're not about me. I've come to terms with it's my history, it's part of who I am. I've got over the emotion behind them, but I can still be emotional about them, but not be upset with it. I can still feel the emotion, but it doesn't bother me anymore. And that's because
Well, this
it's
is a
not
really
about
good
me.
point. This is a really, really great point, actually, because there are, I think, this is my personal opinion, so I'm looking to you for your expert one. I think there's a time to tell a story and there's a time not to tell a story. And in my opinion is, don't tell your story whilst you're still in it or processing it, because people feel afraid for you, because they can feel when somebody's still processing, because we put stickiness out there in the story of like, please join me in having the same belief as me. Then there's the time to tell the story where you're through it, but you have to be careful with when you show the emotion, that A, it's believable, but B, it doesn't take you into the pain where you lose the grip of what you're there for.
Yeah.
So can you
Yeah.
put that into some sort of expert content and context?
Yeah, you don't tell from the wound, you tell from the scar. So it would be like if you've
Hang on, hang on a minute. That you can't not leave a gap there. You don't tell from the wound,
yeah,
you tell from
no.
the scar. I
Yeah.
love that.
Because it's like
As
if
you
you
were.
cut your arm and you pick at it, you're going to make it worse. If
Mm.
it's got a scab on it and you pick at it, it's going to make it worse. The only time you can pick at that wound is when it's healed and it won't do any damage. And it's the same with the story. So you tell from the scar, because you could do
And
yourself
what about,
damage as well as your
and
audience.
also there's that connecting into a vulnerability that actually is exposing rather than helpful, isn't there? There's being careful that when you're stepping into vulnerability on the stage, which it's all vulnerable really, but then there's taking it to a level of self, not obsession, but self, what's the word I'm looking for? When people take the opportunity to have the audience and they get vulnerable, but then it becomes too self
Comes about them, doesn't it? Self-absorbed, is that? Yeah, it becomes self-absorbed.
absorbed.
And then people are sitting there in the audience and they're thinking, why are they telling me this? I'm here to learn about X, Y, or Z. And all you're banging on about is yourself.
Exactly.
And that's where
Yes.
a lot of speakers, they go into that danger zone, and you do end up sitting there going, what's the relevance of this? If your audience ever thinks, what's the relevance of this, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. And what tip would you give people? Because I see so many speakers that it's all about their performance. It feels performance. That switches me right off, Polly. I don't know about you. I prefer to listen to somebody that I feel like they're just chatting to me in a room, where I feel like they're telling the story for the first time and it's not about being that speaker. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like things to be a lot more natural and I feel less choreographed. Um, so, what's the tip that you can give people that they don't make it self absorbed? They don't make it all about them, but they reconnect with their purpose for being there.
Think about who they're telling it to. It doesn't matter how many people are in the room. You are speaking to one individual person, because they are the person that's listening to you. There could be hundreds of thousands of ears out there, but there's only one person at that specific point in time that's hearing your story, because everybody out there is an individual. They've each individually got their own perspective on what you're saying. They've all got their own individual life experiences that puts what you're saying to them in a specific spot, it resonating with them. So when you've got a massive audience, it's always worth finding something that can resonate with the majority of the audience and talk about that. because it's not about you, it's about the audience and what they can identify with and what they can relate to. So, we've all bought bread, we've all gone to the shops, we've all drunk, most of us have probably drunk a cup of coffee. So if you bring something like that into the story or into the position that somebody's got used to, somebody knows what you're talking about, that then helps them make that connection with you. Not everybody, this is one of the differences that I see between inspirational speaking and motivational speaking. It's like not everybody has been to Mount Everest or can experience that, or even has the inclination to climb Mount Everest. They don't want to actually do that. But it motivates people to think I can achieve good things when somebody's spoken passionately about their experience and how they've overcome the things that they've come to reach Mount Everest. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody aspires to that or feels that they could do that. So they get motivated and they go out and they think, this is amazing, this is great, I can do this, I can do that. If he can go to Mount Everest, I can go down the shops and buy a loaf of bread. And they think it's great. But then after a few days, life starts to hit them. And it's like the anxiety will hit back and it's like, I can't go to the shops because there's too many people. I can't do that because of this, that and the other. But if you share a story that is of overcoming your anxiety to go to get a loaf of bread, then they're more likely to connect with that and go, actually, yeah, I can go and get a loaf of bread, because if Polly could do it by doing this, that and the other, she just went at midnight to buy her bread, I can do that. And the anxiety is a lot less. So it gives them that connection to do that and actually inspires them to do it rather than motivates them. And inspiration builds motivation. Inspiration grows motivation. So if you inspire somebody to do something, then that inspiration will then motivate them to take action. So if you think of your audience and think, what is something that most people in that audience will have experienced, you can bring that into your story and that makes them more connected. And then that makes them more likely to pay attention, listen to you, and make that connection that it's about them, not about the person on the stage. Because when you're on the stage, some people will look up to you. Some people will think, who do they think they are up there talking nonsense at me? Or, what are they talking about? And unfortunately, it's those people that we think about more when we're on the stage.
Absolutely.
Because we're thinking, what are they thinking? What are they thinking? But there's some people out there that absolutely need to hear every single word of what you've got to say. What you've got to say isn't for everybody. But it's not about you, it's about your audience. As long as you keep that in mind, that it's about the audience, you are informing the audience about your knowledge, your authority, why you're up there, then it makes it so much easier to connect to them, and they're more likely to listen to you, and it's not as off-putting, and it's not as, oh God, when are they going to get to the interesting point, the bit that I really want to know? Because I've sat there through things, I'm sure you have, and you've sat there and you've gone, when is this person going to stop talking about themselves and get on with the training?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Or even presentations that include famous people, and they're sat with famous people in the private jet with their role, with whatever watch they've got on. And I just think, I could not be less interested in your private jet or how much money you've got or who's famous. I'm interested in the hearts you touch. I'm interested in seeing who you are at your realist. I want to see real people. Polly, how did you go from running for your life, which I love that title. I don't know if it's ever been a title, but you just said it was your words rather than a title. And I thought, that is a title right there. I ran for my life. But I love it in two ways. You were running to save your life, but you're also running towards the life you wanted. So I ran for my life. I just love it as a title. Anyway, consultancy fees will be in a separate invoice for something you didn't ask for, didn't know you wanted, and may never need. But how did you go from running for your life to teaching and training and inspiring people to tell their stories publicly on a stage? How did you go from Paul, who
Yeah.
was under control, to Polly?
It was a long journey. It wasn't
And
an over.
claim your meaning.
Sorry?
Sorry. And, and claim your meaning of life.
Yeah, claim my meaning. Yeah, it was a long journey. It wasn't overnight. It wasn't just sort of like sudden or anything like that. It took a long time. I took a couple more relationships. And it was after crippling anxiety actually that had me trapped in my own home. The crippling anxiety was just, I couldn't go into my own back garden. I remember standing at the back door with my washing basket in my hand the first time I couldn't go out. And it was just like there was a brick wall in front of me and there was the door, and it was just like I can't go out, because if I go out, people are going to see me. They're going to start talking. They're going to report me back, because I thought they were going to be reporting me to somebody, and I just couldn't take that final step over into the garden. At the time, I had some amazing friends. I'm still in touch with them, but we've gone our sort of separate ways now a little bit. They're all living all over the country, and I've moved away from Birmingham as well. So they weren't going to let me just rot away in the house and stay in there. So they very gently coaxed me out and bribed me with cigarettes a lot of the time, because I was in a rented accommodation and I couldn't smoke in the accommodation. And I had tried to give up. I was trying to give up, but I tried to give up multiple times. It was easy to give up, because I'd give up and then I'd start again. Oh, it was easy to give up, but I started again.
Hang on, Polly. I just want to say, I'm not surprised that you didn't give up whilst you're in rented accommodation. If you had
Mm,
crippling anxiety going outside, having a cigarette was the time you went outside. So it served a massive purpose of getting you outside.
yeah,
So that cigarette was strangely, to put it in this context, a lifeline.
it
So
was.
I'm really glad your mind kept hold of it, because it was the reason you went outside. And then, as you're about to say, your friends left a
Yeah.
bread trail of cigarettes.
Yep, they bribed me with, it was literally, they bribed me with cigarettes. I luckily had a car at the time, so that was like became an extension of my house, and that was my all-time safe place. And my friend would say, like, let's go shopping, we'll go in the car, then we can, and it was literally, there'd be times where I'd stop and I'd be shaking in the middle of the shops or whatever, and she'd go, right, come on, let's go and have a cigarette. And it was like, and it was like that sort of time. And as we got a bit bolder, she started taking me to a a pagan moot, actually, in sort of like a meeting of pagans who met together in a pub, and they were all really accepting of anybody. They
I
felt,
knew you were going to use the word accepting.
yeah,
I knew you were
accepted.
going to use that word. That is being accepted is so powerful.
It is. It really, really is. Being accepted in this group. There was very little, there's always people that will be judgmental and things like that, but the majority of them were non-judgmental. They were they didn't care if you were gay, straight, black, purple, orange, green, they didn't care who you were, what you looked like. They just cared about, well, they just cared about how you behaved. Your sort of They reacted back to you, they echoed you back, sort of thing. If you were nice to them, they'd be nice to you. It was just part of the whole community to be accepting of other people. And I started to feel more confident, and I'd go on they'd drag me there on a regular basis, and I started to feel a little bit more relaxed. There was times where I had one friend, and he was massive, and he was a big bald head, massive guy, and I'd hide behind him and cry in the corner of this pub sometimes, just because it was just so overwhelming. But it was here that I saw my first storyteller, and she blew me away. It was like she told this story that was mind blowing, and it transported me off to a whole new place, somewhere completely different, somewhere magical, and everybody in the room was just sat staring at her and just all chitter and chatter and all the noise stopped. Even the person behind the bar stopped what they were doing to listen, and it was amazing. And I just thought, that's so powerful. That is really powerful. And I saw her again a few times over a short period of time, and I started to think, could I do that? Can I tell stories? So I actually asked her how she got into it and whether I could do it. How do you do it? And it took all my courage to actually do that. And she says, anybody could do it. You've just got to do it. And so I went and did some training. I thought, I can't do this till I had some training. And I had it on my birthday. I remember it was, I can't remember the year now. I was thinking, coming up to 32 at the time. I had it on my birthday, and it was amazing. It was brilliant. And I'd met my now husband then. I was still in a different relationship at the time. I'd met him, and he ran an open mic night in Birmingham. And at a ritual, a summer solstice celebration, I told my first story to a group of my friends. And it was one that I'd written myself. I'd made it up myself. And he loved it so much, he wanted me to tell it again at this open mic night that he ran. And he thought it was brilliant. So I did. I said yes. I was going through a yes period. When those periods in your life when you feel, I've got to say yes to everything. It's sort of like, I need to say yes to this. So I said yes. And the first time I was there, we were in this pub. And there was about 30, 40 people in there that I didn't know. So my friends had come with me. My wonderful, wonderful friends had come with me as support. And I stepped up onto that stage, and it was like all of the anxiety that I'd been feeling, all of that anxiety, the stress, the pain, the wanting to run, the wanting to hide, the not wanting to talk to anybody, the not wanting to do anything, the wanting to crawl up into a tiny little ball and hide in a corner, came flooding back. It all came flooding back. I just wanted to run. I wanted to be sick. I wanted to hide. I wanted to cry. But I owned it. I was creating that feeling in myself, so I could control that feeling. It was the first time I felt that I was able to actually control my anxiety, control how I was feeling, and project it out as something else. So I balled it all up, got it all together, created this energy, and then just spewed it out when I got onto the stage and told this story. So it wasn't changed it to a positive energy and just sort of went, bam, this is the story, this is how it is, this is it. And it went down really, really well. People loved it. It was something completely different, because it was normally music or poetry that was being said, and I was going up there telling stories, something completely different. And I went every month for a bit, and then I started, I was being invited to other places to tell different stories. I got onto, I was invited to do the BBC Open Space as part of Arts Fest 2 years running. It used to be the biggest free arts festival in Europe, and the BBC Open Space was one of the prime spots, which was amazing. The more I did two sessions the first year. They wanted me to do 3 or 4 sessions the next year, and it was just great. I was known as the story lady. All of my friends' kids and a lot of kids around knew me as the story lady, and they absolutely loved it. The kids loved it, the adults loved it, because the stories that you can tell are for everybody. And I try and pick stories that were motivational, inspirational, had a message or a strong female character in them, so that I could pass those sort of messages to other people. And it's when my love of story really started, and I started to become really obsessed with it. I've got shelves of fairy tales and myths and legends and Grimm. I've got a 200-year-old book of Grimm's fairy tales and stuff like that. I'm obsessed. I've got a whole wardrobe, the whole bookshelf full of just story tales, myths, legends from all over the world. And there's such a lovely pattern to them, and I'm absolutely obsessed with stories. And then I started learning more about why we tell stories, where they come from, the history of them, what's the purpose of them, and all of that. And then life sort of got in the way again, and I moved down south, and had my kids, because Paul, who invited me to that event, we got closer because he'd invite me more. He's my biggest fan. He's my biggest cheerleader. He's the one that practice everything on. He's the one that will give me the proper feedback. And the relationship I was in at the time was very neglectful. And on both of our parts towards the end, we just didn't really interact with each other much. I said to him the one time, I says, if your computer could make you a bacon sandwich, you wouldn't need me at all, would you? And he turned around and said, no, not really. And we split very amicably and very nicely, because it was at that point in the relationship. But then me and Paul started to go out and see more things and do more things, and he was always there encouraging me to go tell them stories, do this, do that. And we got married in monkey business in Dorset in 2010. So the life's just got better and better ever since. But I had the kids, and it was in 2014 I started working as a party light consultant, selling fragrances and home candles and stuff. And I wasn't doing very well. And then I started telling stories of why I was doing it, stories about the products, and it started to pick up. And then 2019, I thought, I need to start telling my stories. I need to get back into storytelling and start telling my stories and getting out there and sharing my experiences, because I'd healed from so much. My mental health journey was the first story that I started to share with other people. And they'd come back to me and say, that's so grateful that you've shared that story with me, because I don't feel alone. I don't feel like I'm on my own anymore. I don't feel like I'm isolated, or that, that people are going to look down at me for admitting that I've had this problem or I'm going through this problem. So I thought, I'm going to make a start doing this in a big, wider sense. And then COVID hit, and we all sort of went, oh my God, what's going on? What are we doing? We can't carry on with life as normal. But I was so passionate about the storytelling side of things and getting out there and sharing my stories with people that I actually got myself a diploma in narrative therapy. I started studying psychology. I studied even more about storytelling in business and how that works, and the psychology behind that and why it's important, and just trying to find ways to keep on with my journey, keep on with this purpose that I'd been given. And kept remembering this 21-year-old who felt so worthless, so trapped, so worthless, so unimportant, that I didn't want anybody else to ever feel that bad and that way ever again. So that kept my purpose going. That kept knowing my true why. That's my true why as to why I do what I do. It keeps me going in the bad times, keeps me going through everything, kept me going through COVID. And then after that, I've met other people like yourself and the lovely Sammy who was running that event, and it's just built up further and further from there. And I'm now at a point where I'm feeling so much more confident in myself, in my life, in the core people in my life. I don't think it would matter what I did, what I said to those people on a stage to a load of other people. It doesn't matter if there's people out there who don't like me, who absolutely hate me, who think what I'm saying is awful. As long as there's some people in that audience who take value from it, it doesn't matter to me, because the people that matter, my core people, love me no matter what. And they always will. And as long as I've got those people, I value them so much because of what I've gone through, what I've had, what I've experienced, that they mean so much to me, but they are always there for me, and they take me for who I am, what I am, and how I am, which is so very important.
It really is. I think it's vital to our thriving to have a base of acceptance. And I think we all need at least one person who sees us, warts and all, and accepts us without rejection. And I just want to give our book a plug.
Yes.
So Lee and I are co-authors with 18 other, so we make 2, and then 18 other co-authors wrote a chapter in this book. And Pollie's chapter is Awaken Your Inner Star. And having heard some of your journey, Pollie, because there is a chapter in here that you've not touched on, so I think And trust me, when you read the chapter that's in this book, you think, my goodness, this woman is so resilient and has earned her stripes to be able to call herself the Speakers Storyteller. But when you see the title, Awaken Your Inner Star, you know from hearing your story so far that this is going to be good, and that you have the authority to own that chapter. And actually, STAR is your methodology as well, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I've created the STAR storytelling system. It's actually a binary STAR system now because it's developed a bit further. But I love the star imagery and I love the idea that the light from a star has travelled all this way to reach us, and it's like a story, because that is it's an old light that's travelled, but your story can travel as well, and it can travel for years and years and years and years and years. So like the fairy tales and things we're telling now were told hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but we're still telling them. And with the star, the light is from hundreds of years ago, but we can still see it. And it's the same with your story. Your story can go on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years if it's told, but it's got to be told before it can start the journey. So stars are I just love that sort of metaphor for stories, and dandelions as well. But that's
well, you say here, your story is like a dandelion seed. Once set free, you don't know where it will land and where it will germinate into something powerful. And I think I have a saying, when you have someone's attention, take great care with it. And that goes to some of what we were saying earlier about when you're listening to a speaker and you think, this is all about you. When have I got a role in this? Where's my space in this story? Where can I relate in this story? And that's why I think that paragraph, the dandelion paragraph, is so powerful, because we need to tell stories that other people can own and tell themselves or relate to or have as part of their story. I heard Pollie speak and it inspired me to narrate my own story. So your story lives on in other people's stories. So I think, this book is available on Amazon. Catalysts of Change, how 20 global change makers overcame their fears to turn their ideas into impactful, mission-driven businesses. And I think hearing your Meant for More story, from a girl christened Pauline to controlled as Paul and ran for her life as Polly, is so inspiring, Polly. And I think that there'll be people listening that will think, how genius that she stayed a smoker to get outside and overcome her crippling fear of being outside.
Yeah,
how inspiring. She went, no, we're not, but we can see why. We can totally see why it had its place. And then how you went from having crippling fear to taking steps that were aided by friends as well, that value of connection, to going on open mic night. Who goes from crippling fear, carrying a wash basket of washing outside and hitting the wall of fear, then eventually is an open mic lady. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to yours for giving us your truth, your story, your love, your care, and supporting the Meant for More movement, where more people, I hope, live with their meaning in their lives. Thank you so much, Pollie.
Thank you so much for having me. Movement is amazing, and I'm happy to support you in any way I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, darling. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you would like to be involved in the Meant for More movement, then please drop me a line at lisa@lisaclifford.co.uk. Whether that's you're interested in being on the podcast, taking part in any of the trainings, or would just love to know how you can help empower others, then let's have a conversation. Thank you for listening, and we'll connect again very soon.